Three, two, one, here we go. RAINMAN'S Take podcast. Observations on the world we live in. My take on current events and other topics of interest. Also interviews with some really cool people. So let's get the conversation going. Before we get into it with John, quick shout out to all of you who are part of RAINMAN'S Take community. Thank you very much. If you are new to the channel, thank you. Welcome. I know you're going to love the content. So go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. That way it'll help me get this channel out to more people and be able to provide more great content for you. So with that being said, Johnny, how you doing?
Great.
All right.
Great.
Now, here we go. You brought up a very interesting point just a second ago, and that was you were a competitor and your athletic ability almost sort of drove you into golf. And so I guess what I'm really interested in is that idea of the competitor, because obviously you were enough of an athlete where you could pick up golf and take it to a very high level. Can you teach that competitiveness in somebody when you like, and use your examples of some of the kids that you've trained before? Is that possible?
It's a great question. Teaching competitiveness, I think you can get better at everything, but you can't produce a competitor. I don't think you can. I don't think you can in any sport. And I have two boys, so I've been fortunate enough to coach, just about every sport that they played, but predominantly baseball and basketball that they've played. And you have kids out there that are bound in talent, and you sit there and you say, could you just have a little bit more drive? Yeah. Could you just, whatever? Maybe they don't enjoy it enough to have that drive. I don't know what it is. My kids did have competitive drive. Maybe it's just innate with how I played with a chip on my shoulder, but it's just one of those things that I'm not sure you can. But I will say that you can teach mental toughness in competition. So by getting the kids to understand all the parts that go into that, and I call it an animal of prey mentality. So animal of prey, I learned we had a rabbit. My wife and I had a rabbit. Now, don't ask why we had a rabbit. We had a rabbit, and the thing ate like a tennis shoe and was dying in the corner. We brought it to the vet, and they said, well, this is already shut down. It's, you're going to have to put it to sleep. I'm like, what do you mean already shut down? And they said that I don't even know if this is true, but they said like a rabbit is an animal of prey. So like they get caught in the wild, they can pretty much shut their system down, and then they don't have to suffer so much as they're just about to get eaten. So my thing to these kids is don't be an animal of prey. Like you got to fight and fight and fight and fight to squirm out, because as soon as you give in, you're dead. And so I think you can teach that, and letting them understand here are some of the things that are going to start to push you into that direction of wanting to not quit, but wanting to give in on that particular day. And if you can recognize some of those, you can turn that tide and change the competitive outlook to it. So I think you can teach, basically it's coping skills to them, but in a little bit harder fashion than, just the lovey-dovey world that these kids are supposed to live in. You got to understand that there is a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of turmoil, and there's a lot of decision-making that has to be made. And you can be tough in that mental fortitude to make the right decisions, I guess is the way. It's not always going to go your way, but you can be tough enough to make a good educated decision that's necessary in those situations.
Well, and that's the one thing that I find fascinating about golf is it is literally you versus the course, the other competitors in the field, you against your head. I mean, it is. There's no place to hide. Whereas, sports, other team sports, you got 11 other guys that need to be doing their job for you to be successful. But golf, it's you out there. And one of the things that you and I had talked about in pre-production is just the idea of, you get guys like a Tiger Woods, who is just an obviously unbelievable golfer, but he has just got that killer mentality. He's like a football player playing golf. he's just that killer, but dressed up nice and all the etiquette of golf. And I guess you have to have that, right?
Yeah. And something that I tell my students and I kind of live by is ability minus distractions equals performance. And I think that's a great way to look at life and sports. So Tiger Woods, for instance, Tiger Woods won the 97 Masters. Ability is a 10 out of 10. There's no question at that time in his life. But then he started going to the U.S. Open, which was at Congressional that year, getting death threats. We don't want a black guy winning pro tournaments. It's 1997. There's still a lot of that going on. Probably still is today. But distractions skyrocket. Yeah. Now it's, who's going to walk around with me and my family? Who's going to cover my mom and dad when they're walking in the crowd? All this stuff that has nothing to do with golf became a distraction. So ability, 10, distractions all of a sudden go from a 2 to an 8. And so your performance goes down. So limiting distractions is the big thing that I think is most important to getting these kids and whatever CEOs and professional athletes to get the best of their ability. Hopefully their ability keeps improving, but there's a point where you can get better by just limiting distractions. And that's a cool way to look at it. And it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of leads into, to do that, there obviously is a level of selfishness. But, you talk to any of these professionals, well, I don't talk to them, you have in the past, but, you watch them on television and literally everything revolves around them. And I mean, to be at that level, it has to be that way, right?
Yeah. There's an extreme amount of selfishness. It's quite fascinating to even fathom. It's, you and I, we do our job, and then, we know we have an obligation to whoever we go home to, or a family or whatever. You have to spend some time with them. And it definitely weighs into what you're doing for yourself. They don't even take that into consideration. Their whole life, they've been catered to. There's no question about it. A professional athlete has been catered to. They don't really know the other side of it. And they take care of themselves first. And I do believe that that's why they get to that level, is because they know how to put the mask on themselves first, where everyone else is scrambled to put the mask on everyone else, and then you're dead, right? Before you can help anyone else. They really know how to put the mask on themselves first. So they do that, and they get the most out of themselves, and they feel in their way, in their narcissistic way, that that's going to help the common person. Because I'm great. I'm going to help you. And so that's the way they think. And they demand out of their instructors and their personal trainers and everything that they're their universe. And it's very interesting, and you deal with it in general. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. But yes, they're narcissistic, they're egotistical, but that's all they know. Yeah. You can't blame them.
Well, and exactly. And the rewards are incredible. Fame, unbelievable amounts of money. And I would assume, and if they don't, you wonder where they crawled, what rock they crawled out from under, but you assume that everybody that's around them, family, all that, understands that as well, because they all, most of these guys, it seems like, are taking their families kind of along with them, and which is really cool. Yeah. And so does that really make them a narcissist or not? Who knows? But the laser focus is definitely something that I find fascinating. It's sort of the game within the game whenever I'm watching it on television.
It's amazing. And again, then they need a challenge, right? They've now athletically peaked out, so they need a challenge. And whether that's starting a business or playing golf or, playing pickleball or whatever it is, but they need a challenge, because that's actually the only thing they feel their net worth is based on, is them being competitive and them being good at something. And they don't see themselves good at the normal things that we see ourselves good at. They still need to be good in a competitive standpoint. And that's the other thing that you have to know and to get into their heads. So for a junior golfer nowadays, it's, boy, am I going to be on Instagram? Am I going to be on this? Am I going to be holding the trophy? That's what they're dealing with. And a professional athlete is like, they're going to know who I am. Like, I played 14 years in the NFL. I was an all-pro 6 years. No one knows who I am. I wore a helmet, and they're all 20 years younger than me. So it's it's the different ranges of what we're looking for in our lives. And I will say that from a teaching standpoint, I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be that guy that said, Oh, you have a 13-year-old, you got to bring him to Ronis. Ronis is going to get him into college and he's going to play golf. Like, he's that guy. And then once you become that guy, you realize the burden is gigantic, because now you have text messages all day long, and, you know, we got to call Villanova, and we got to call, Wake Forest, and we got to call this. And, you know, he played poorly today. What should we say to him? And it's like, whoa, now I don't want to be this guy anymore. Yeah. So it's those things that you're battling with nonstop, whether you're on the competitive side of it and you wanted to be great and you won a tournament and then now everyone expects you to win every tournament, or you're on the teaching side of it where, I'm that guy. I'm the greatest teacher in the world. Right? You're not. Right. You just happen to have a good student. So those are the things that we're dealing with in a constantly competitive nature. And this world that we live in is insanely. The difference in when we got recruited, when you and I got recruited to nowadays, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling.
And it reminds me a couple stories of some people that I know, a couple that I know. They had the boy is an adult now, but when he was young, 11, 12, probably junior high, maybe sixth grade, junior high, first year of high school, he was an unbelievable hockey player. Like, people were looking at him like, this kid is he could be a pro. And he just got burnt out. And I don't think he even skates anymore. Yeah. I mean, he got burnt out to the point where he just dropped it and has never, ever looked back. And is that just the world we're living in, or was that happening back when we were growing up? I don't remember.
Well, I mean, what is burnt out? Burnt out is you no longer love playing. Yeah. And that's burnt out. So there's no one who gets burnt out because they no longer love playing. It's because of all the other factors around it that they've been forced to treat it as a job for so long. And why are you treating it as a job? For your own self-fulfillment, that's fine. But for self-fulfillment of a parent or a friend or a girlfriend or whatever, so that you can be higher on their pedestal because you're good at hitting a slap shot. I mean, there's no reason for that, but that's why someone would get burnt out. There's no reason. So the guys who are retiring at 42 years old, screaming, crying because they can no longer play the game, those are the people that you don't have to feel bad for. Obviously, they got $200 million in the bank, but you have to say, wow, they really loved the sport and they did it for themselves. And in that regard, you commend them for doing it the whole time for themselves. It was cool to watch.
Yeah. Now, do you, in the book that you wrote about bringing up a junior golfer, you get into that sort of thing? I mean, because obviously you wrote that book for the parents of these junior golfers and sort of the steps. So talk to me a little bit about that. I mean, have the parents changed at all? Have they?
The parents that have read the book, they come to me and they say, in that part of the book, I'm not doing that anymore. I talk about the teacher and the student relationship, and that parents can't hang around. Parents drop the kid off and they're there for 55 minutes, and the last 5 minutes, the parent can come in. That's how I roll. And so, because the child may want to tell the instructor and needs to know that the instructor is purely never going to say anything to the parent, but the student needs to tell the instructor, if I shot 82, 82, 82, and I'm really down, well, are you just not playing well? Or is there something else bothering you? Well, yeah, my dad hounds me about my greens and regulation the whole time going there and the whole time coming back, and I can't putt anymore and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, well, we got to change that framework. So how can we get rid of that? Now, if the parent's standing there, you think the kid's ever going to say that? 13 years old? Yeah. No. Yeah. So those are the things. And so when the parents read the book, they know they're not welcome in the studio until that time is there. And then they can come in and ask any question they want, but they can't talk about the player. They can't talk about how he's playing or what they're doing. That's my job. And if I'm not doing a good enough job, that's fine. Go find someone else. Yeah. But it's not your job. Your job is to tell him to take out the trash and to do his homework and to be nice to his mother. It is not to tell him to go hit 200 putts. So, all right, real quick, how has that been? I mean, how do the parents take that? Because where you are, Leesburg, Virginia, is outside of DC. There's a lot of alpha people in that community.
What do they like when you tell them that?
They don't like it. They don't like
Yeah.
it, but I'm the ultimate alpha, right, in this relationship. And if I back down, then they own the situation. So they can go see someone else. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's not going to bother me. But for the sake of that child, I have to be that alpha. Because I know that that child's not going to love the game as much as they possibly could. And golf is a lifetime sport. So imagine I love chocolate. And now for some reason, someone made me hate chocolate. So now I don't eat chocolate for the rest of my life. What a shame. Chocolate's good. So golf is a lifetime sport. And because you were 14 and your dad didn't like the way you're playing in competitive tournaments, now you don't play golf anymore. What a waste.
Yeah.
It's just such a nice place to be. So that's my job. That's my role. And that's what I'm talking about, the burden. The burden is it can be overwhelming about you're responsible for getting the kids into school and calling the coaches and getting the kid into a situation where you want to recommend them. Because, there's kids we deal with that we don't like, and I can't recommend that kid to a coach if I don't really like him. So I got to make him a likable young man or young woman. The girls are not easy to like. They're the best. But the boys can be punks. And when they are, sometimes you got to sit them down and you got to say, I don't know if this is from your dad that's putting this into you. Yeah. But because I know it's not your mom. But the fact is, if you're going to get to the point you want to get to, it's got to stop. So those are the things. And so, yes, the parents. And yes, Leesburg, Virginia, you see them on the news every night with the parents and the teachers unions and all the other stuff.
Right.
It's a crazy area that we live in here. And it's a so-called ultra wealthy area that everyone thinks they're wealthy when they're not. It's just one of those things. And yes, you got to lay down the line and there's plenty of people to go to if they want to go to them. And that's not me trying to be a hard ass or that I'm any better than anyone else. It's just, this is the way it has to work with me or we're not going to get the full potential out of your child.
Right. You brought up and I definitely want to ask you a few questions about when you run across pro athletes out on the golf course, because that's fascinating to me. But one of the another example that I wanted to bring up was another friend of mine who, when he was growing up, was an outstanding golfer and actually tried out for a pretty high level D1 college for golf, and it was basically one of the sort of tournaments kind of leading up to going to college, and he was at that point basically scratched. So he was good enough physically to get to that next level, and it was interesting because when he was telling me the story, I found it fascinating because he ended up not playing very well, and obviously didn't make it and didn't move forward in golf. And I kind of asked him, I said, what was it? And he had the self-awareness enough to be like, I just didn't have it. I didn't have the mental game to take it to that next level. And I found that fascinating. That's kind of exactly what we're talking about here is, there's a great series on Netflix, the Full Swing, about the PGA.
Yeah. Love it.
And one of the scenes they show is Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas on a private jet heading to play a practice round, and they're gambling. They're just gambling on everything.
The most ridiculous gambling you've ever seen. And I've been in the weirdest way, part of some of those high-end professional athletes, really high-end, not to mention any names of maybe the most known basketball player to ever walk the planet, betting on like what they're doing, that you just happen to have a deck of cards and you just flip it and say, between 4 and 5 or between 6 and 8. And it's just 1,000. And it's, there goes those dogs again. But it's a competitive nature that it's nonstop. Their brain is constantly in competitive mode. It's wild. It's really wild to see.
Yeah. Dude, I love it. That was my dogs last time. I bring them down to the studio and, next thing you know, they go crazy because the FedEx guy shows up.
I know you usually come down in the basement, so I think they would just, you could hear their claws and everything. It's fucking unbelievable.
I was smart enough today. I took them let them run around for quite a bit before we got on the air. So
usually my wife will be here and she'll cover, and then I'll cover for her if she's on a meeting. But it's a clusterfuck. Sorry about that.
I love it. All right. So getting back to the professional athletes that you've been around when they're playing and gambling and just just do something to keep those competitive juices going. And what came to my mind was, you see that great golf tournament that they play up in Lake Tahoe, that Pro-Am, and there's got, Tony Romo's there, all bunch of current and pro or former pro athletes are all playing up there. And Larry Fitzgerald, the wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals, apparently is an unbelievable golfer. Like, he could go and try out for the senior tour. Is that something? Is that how those guys are looking at it? Like, that could be their next. You get a guy like Tony Romo who probably plays every single day. Is that what they're looking at, or is Larry Fitzgerald just sort of one of these outliers?
Yeah, there's some really good ones that are. I was playing. We used to play with I teach the owners of the Nationals, the Washington Nationals, and I've been teaching them for 20 years. And so we'd have the players out every year, and we'd all we'd pair up, and there'd be like 25 of the players. And so I would play with a group every year, and it would be really cool. But one year I played with Tyler Clippard, who was a relief pitcher for the Nats and played with the Yankees and the Nats. This guy was unbelievable. I mean, he was as good a ball striker and player that I have seen. And at the end, we were just sitting there having a beer, and I said, Tyler, there was at some point that you would decide whether you were going to play golf or you were going to play baseball. And he said, yeah, interestingly enough, between my sophomore and junior year of high school, my velocity went from like 85 to 89 of pitching. And they said that's kind of you're going to get drafted if you get like to 90 or 91. And so he committed to that. But he said that was really the decision that made it, because he easily could have played golf in college, and he probably could have played professionally too. Yeah. So when you take a look at that, I think they know, though, having gone through one sport and being good at it, they know how probably impossible it would be to play on the senior tour. But again, I think that they could play in maybe a U.S. amateur or whatever. One thing you notice is that as good as they may sound like they are on TV in a Pro-Am like that, you still don't see these former athletes playing in a U.S. amateur or whatever they're. So, it's not like most of them never get to the top of another sport, because it's just one of those things where it takes, years and years and years to get to that point. So I think they realize that, but they still have those competitive juices to say, where might it get me? And I'm going to keep working on it.
Yeah.
And then they're physical.
Yeah. It's funny. I'll be sitting there watching golf on the TV, and it's funny because there's a lot of people out there who think that that's like watching paint dry, watching golf on TV. But I just love it. And I think about the times when I do play. Like I said, I'm a hack out there, but I love it, and I love it for all the reasons you're talking about. It's competitive. I'll get to the point where maybe it's a par 3, or I'm next to one of my buddies on the fairway, and we're the same distance from the hole, and then you bet on that one shot, which kind of evens the playing field. And then every once in a while, I'll get this delusion of grandeur, because I inevitably, whenever I'm out there, people always say, Brian, you got a real nice swing. You're a great athlete. You could definitely take a couple lessons, and you can definitely get a lot better. Is it basically impossible? If I were to say right now, in 10 years, I want to be on the scene, I want to do one of those amateur tours or something like that. Is it basically impossible for a guy like me who has some level of athleticism? But that's impossible, right? It's impossible.
Yeah. It's too hard. It's just too hard. It's too hard to sport.
Thanks. You just ruined my whole day.
I think I've officially ruined about 1 million of your viewers here lives and hopes and dreams. It's just one of those things. It's total immersion. It's just, I guess it's the same as me saying that in 10 years, do I want to speak a language at a level that no one would ever know that it wasn't my second language, kind of thing? Or do I want to play the violin at a concert level? There's such an immersion that is involved that you can't rationally think that that's going to happen. Now, if I was to say, all right, Luke, you have no friends, you have no life, you have no hobbies, you have nothing, and you're going to do this for 8 hours a day, and that's lifting weights and all the other stuff, then could I say that you might have a chance? Yeah, you might. And that's a scary thing. You might.
Yeah.
It's one of those crazy things. It's just like in some other sports where you sit there and you say, all right, Tim Tebow, right? Physically, he certainly was good enough to play football. He could do a lot of things that other quarterbacks couldn't do, but it wasn't a good thrower of the football. Can you learn that? Can you learn how to throw a football if you just do it all day for a year? Well, apparently not. So it's one of those, or a guy who can't shoot as well on the basketball. He's a professional. He's a point guard. He's a great, assist man and all the other stuff. But wouldn't it be good if he could shoot the 3-pointer a little bit better? How hard is that? The basket's not moving.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things where it's a total immersion thing. I think you need to learn it a little bit when you're younger. And to think that you're going to do it later on is probably just not going to happen. But just to be blatantly honest.
Thanks. I love it. All right. So, thanks for that, John. I appreciate it. That's the way to go into the weekend, feeling really bad about myself. And what's actually and this is sad, but it's exactly what you just said. And I knew a couple, we had met them probably 15 years ago. And the guy had come out from New York City. He and his wife, they were basically our age, so probably in mid 40s or late 30s, early 40s when I met them. He crushed it. He was a hedge fund guy, made a gazillion dollars. So they retired and they came out here, and he just started playing golf all the time. And he had that delusion that if he just did that, he would make it. The last I heard, one was kind of sad, but you sort of expected that. And then the other one, really sad, the two pieces of news about him. First one was he had that, he got to the point where he had that one, I don't even remember what level of tournament it was, but it's the base level to kind of start the whole thing. And of course, he sucks out there. And then the next thing he drank himself to death. Yeah. So, his ego must have been such that he thought he could do it. And when he did it was. And
drinking's a lot easier than playing golf. So, if you're going to be good at something, drinking's a lot easier than being golf. And it's a shame, but that's honestly, that's why I think that we have to always have something that we're striving for to be somewhat decent at it, because there's the other things in life that maybe could drag us down a little bit, or emotionally or whatever it may be, are kind of easy, where this stuff's hard. It's hard. Sports is hard. Sports is hard. Life is hard. But the fact is, if we don't have that carrot out there, and golf's just one of those things that the carrot can stay out there for a long, long time. That's why it's so cool.
Right.
And that's why we're talking about it. But we always have to have that carrot, or else we can just fall into the things that are way easier to do, which usually sometimes get us into a little bit of trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, because I constantly am, within anything I do. I mean, the podcast is a perfect example. I'm still trying to get my head around the technology with it. And it's frustrating, but you're growing and you're moving forward. Yep. And when you stop doing that, everybody says that when you stop doing something, or stop striving to improve in any part of your life, that becomes atrophy.
You die.
Bad things can happen.
Yeah. It's the great white, it's the shark mentality, right? The shark can't stop moving or else it drowns. So move towards something, again, and you talked, and we talked about this last time we talked, but the going for lessons, it's one of those things that, should you take some golf lessons? Yeah. When you are ready to allocate that priority, that it's worth it. So, with anything else, I could take a painting lesson. I don't think I could paint a lick. I could take a painting lesson. Is that going to make me any better? No. But if I took a lot of lessons and I practice, I'm going to improve at something. I'm going to be able to paint something a little bit better. So it's all about getting to the point in your life where that is a priority. And it could be a priority out of necessity, because you can't do any of that other stuff. Or it could be a priority because you just really love it that much. But just like anything, you got to love it. And then you're going to get better and better. If you watch your first podcast, and I've been doing 12 or 13 years of a podcast and radio show, and if I listen to the first ones and the ones we do now, I think I'm better at it. I don't know how much better, but I think I'm better. So it's one of those things. And I think the real reason, especially for me, and I think for you too, it's not our primary living. It's a real break, and we love it to do it. And so I think that's why we're getting better at it, because we really love it. And once you stop loving it, why do it? So that's one of those things for golf, again, lifetime sport. You can do it for years and years and years. And as long as you enjoy it, then you never know. You might be I taught a guy who was not 93 years old. I taught him for years. His name was Sidney Harmon of Harman Kardon. If you know the Harman Kardon receivers and Harman Kardon speakers, and they're in cars and everything else. It was Sidney Harmon. So he took lessons until he was 93 years old. I was giving him a lesson, and I said, "Hey, Doc, how you feeling? What's going on?" And he said to me in these words, and I hear it all the time. And he said, "I look a lot better than I am." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, good. Let's hit some balls." But he was dead the next week. And what he didn't tell me is he had lymphoma, and he went into the hospital with a complication of something, and he died. But I wish he would have told me, because it would have been one of those things where I would have said, "I really appreciate you in my life for showing me that at 93 years old, you're taking golf lessons to get better at something at 93 years old." And I think that's really cool. So that's what golf and other things in our life can do for us, is we can have something that we think, maybe I can get a little bit better today at that. And again, if we don't have that, I think we're dying.
Yeah, interesting. It's as those old sports injuries start to catch up, and my ortho tells me not to run anymore because your knees are shot. So now I'm swimming, and I'm enjoying golf. And one of the other things that blows my mind, and I don't know why I'm so surprised at this, because these guys are in their late 20s, 30s, but the idea of golf is hard enough for me just to focus on shooting. I can't imagine doing that and walking around for 4 hours and keeping that level of intensity and focus for that whole time while you're walking. I mean, how do you getting back to when you teach young kids in junior golf, what do you do to help them keep that focus for that long?
Well, you got to be prepared. First of all, you got to be prepared due to repetition and situations, right? So when you're a great lacrosse player and you knew everything to do, but you were better at lacrosse than someone else because you had seen a much higher level of situational lacrosse than some of these other guys. So when a situation happened, you were able to understand it, see it, and do it like that, where someone else might do it like that. And that little break was enough for someone to be on him, smack him over the head, or whatever you barbarians do on the lacrosse field. But you didn't have that. Yours was done. Your movement was made because you were at a higher level, so you were prepared. And so that's the biggest thing. You prepare them physically and mentally for that thing. And I told you this before, and I think it's preparation and expectations are the biggest thing in the world. But this has nothing to do with the golf of mine or my student's career. Well, student a little bit. I told you my caddying story. And this was a situation where I have a fellow named Michael Brennan, plays for Wake Forest, and he's a great player. And I had been a pro at a place called Woodmont Country Club for 20 years. And that's where the final site of the U.S. Open qualifying is every year. And so we hosted it every single year. Well, Michael makes it to the final qualifying site. So if you qualify from Woodmont, you play in the U.S. Open. And the U.S. Open was at Torrey Pines. I think it was 2 years ago. Michael said, Coach Ronis, do you think that you could caddy for me at Woodmont? 36 holes, one day. And I probably weighed about 50 pounds more than I do right now. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. Like, of course, you want me to caddy for you because I know the course. I can do that. Of course I can. Yeah. Well, kind of as soon as I said that, I was scared because I'm like, I got a caddy for 36 holes. It's supposed to be 105 degrees. And, but I hope I can do it, but I'll be fine. What am I doing? I'm just carrying a golf bag, right? So we get out there, we play the first 18. Michael plays pretty well. He's like even par. We know that like 500 par has got to get in there. So he's got to play pretty well. And as we're walking up the 18th hole, this is our first 18th hole, I'm feeling my feet start to rub. I'm feeling some blisters. They're sweating. I waddle to the car after my first 18, blast on the air conditioning, put my feet and my socks up on the air conditioning, see if I can dry things off. Of course, pounding the powder everywhere that I possibly could. I have 20 minutes. I go back out to that first tee. Well, now I'm just counting the holes now backwards. I'm just surviving. I'm not even worried about what he's doing.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So we're going along pretty normally. He shoots like another even par. So he's even par. And I said, Michael, we got 9 holes. We got to get this done right now. And he's looking at me like I'm half dying, just limping behind him. But I said, we need to go 5 under on this 9. Well, he pars the first hole and then birdie, birdie, birdie. And birdie, 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 birdie. And we're walking up this hill, steep hill. So it's now our 30th hole, 31st hole. And I now start to cramp. Now, I was about to take my shoes off because my feet are bleeding also. But I'm about to take my shoes off and just walk with no feet. But now he's made 4 birdies in a row. I'm like, that's bad karma. Can't take the shoes off. Got to keep them on.
Yeah.
I'm walking up this hill. Now I'm totally cramped. So I can't even walk at all at that point. And the guys that we're playing with now, they're out of it. And they know Mikey's got a chance.
Yeah.
And because we have a live scoreboard. And they're throwing these tablets to me, these potassium tablets or whatever they are. You're supposed to mix them up with water.
Yeah.
We have no water. They're saying, just chew these tablets. You'll be fine. Ends up that we get into the clubhouse and it's 4 under par. It's 1 stroke back. One guy who's left is out there. He's got to finish like 4 more holes.
Yeah.
If he comes in even par the 4 holes, then Mikey's the first alternate. If not, then we go out on a playoff. And I told you this. I'm sitting there. He's 19 years old. And he's sitting 2 stools down from me. And remember, I spent 20 years at this place. So people are coming up to me. Hey, John, how you doing? I'm like drooling all over myself. I can't even move my arms or legs. My feet are bleeding. And I had bitten by a nest of chiggers the day before. So I looked like I got shotgun blasts on the back of my thigh. It was unbelievable. So I'm sitting there, and Mike's dad has gotten there by now. And I look over to him, and I go, Michael, your dad's here. If you go to a playoff, do you think your dad can caddy for you? And he just comes up from his phone, and he just turns his head, and he goes, he could, but he's not. And I almost started crying at that point. And I got up and started walking around. Unfortunately, he didn't get in the playoff. He did go to Torrey Pines. He was the first alternate, and it was a great experience for him. But that was my caddy program. But that was the loop around to why I even said that is because I was woefully unprepared for that activity. But mentally, I thought, I can do it. But once I got in the situation, it was harrowing. So if you're not prepared in the sport that you're playing, you can't just say, I'm sure I can do that. I've done that before. You have to prepare mentally and physically for that situation, or else you end up having my caddying story. So that's kind of the mentality behind as we get older, the athlete, again, you can't just hark back on, I could do that when I was 20. You got to prepare each day to get to that level. Sorry for that long-winded story, but it was always one of my funnier stories that I've been a part of. It was crazy.
Were you able to even give him kind of pointers at me? Were you able to, while you're sucking it up physically, you're focused and you're able to still give him the inputs that
that's what I was most proud of, because I think being a competitor my whole life and feeling like I'm really mentally very tough, that I feel like that, whether I am or not. Don't ask my wife. Once I got to the place that I needed to get to by, limping to that place, I could shut off all the pain and really focus on the situation and give him good advice. So in that regard, I was very pleased with how I was able to perform, because don't forget, now I'm in my own way, I'm thinking of this as a competitive performance for me too. So there's a narcissistic part of me coming out. And so I think I was able to do that. But, once the ball was hit and I picked up the bag and started walking, I was woefully aware that it was taking me a long time to get to where I needed to get to. But I think that's the competitive aspect that you have to, again, you either give in or you suck it up and you figure it out. And I think I was able to do that.
Yeah. And kind of wrapping this all up, kind of what we've been talking about the whole time. And that is, obviously you teach you take the raw talent and then you teach the sport, but the head game, you either have it at a certain level, because like you were saying earlier, you can train them to turn that focus on and that sort of thing. But if they don't have the baseline, you're in front of me, I'm kicking your ass, then it's really
not going to happen.
That's the ceiling.
It totally is.
Wherever
and as soon as they get to that point in their competitive atmosphere, whether it's playing ping pong or playing one-on-one or playing their sport that they're competing in, if you have that above them, you win. So that's the other side of it, is that person who has it knows if they can play physically to their ability, that mentally they conquer every time, because there's no way that person's going to be better mentally than them. So they have to depend on the physicality of it happening, but they know they win. And boy, what a huge boost up that is mentally, when you know that you physically got it and you know you mentally always have it over them, you win. Yeah. It's like, it's not even a problem.
Yeah. And that goes back to the Tiger Woods. He had it, he had that killer instinct. And he also, everybody that played with him knew exactly what to expect. There's going to be 10,000 people following you. And Tiger just had that ability to.
The ability to not get caught up in that circus around him is one of the most amazing things in silent sports, I call them, that you could ever get your eyes around. It's, silent sports are basically golf and tennis. It's silence and then it's cheering. Where the other ones, there's always a crowd going on. But the ability for Tiger with that many people around him and the circus that goes on, to be able to shut that off and make silence for himself is amazing. And the people he played with could never do it. He knew he had that up on him too, because they're in the final group, and he knew he was 2 strokes ahead at the beginning, because they couldn't handle all the crud that was going on around him, because it was so insane. So, and he's just the greatest player to ever walk the planet, I think, even though Nicklaus is still my favorite of all time, but Tiger's the greatest player ever.
Yeah. And was that his, because legendary, his father really pushed him when he was younger to excel. Was that the dad instilling?
I think his dad put in the units required to get to that point, and the units required were chip on the shoulder. You're African-American. No one's going to give you a chance. In fact, you're a mutt. You're not even just African-American. You're a mutt. You're African-American. You're whatever, Asian, Filipino, whatever it was, that muttdom, and no one's going to give you a chance. And you know what? You're probably not going to be that good anyways. And then Earl Woods turned it around. Earl Woods, he's not the greatest guy in history, but Earl Woods turned it around and was like, you are the greatest. Now expect to be the greatest. So I think it was that chip on the shoulder, and then I am better than everyone else, and I'm going to keep proving that I'm better than everyone else, so that you can you're never in control of my fate. I'll tell you this quick story, Luke, and I've lived with this for a million years. I think it was our sophomore year. We played together in our freshman year in JV basketball, and I was starting to physically. I was too small and all the other stuff. But our sophomore year, I still was as good as anyone that was playing on that team. And I got cut. Flannery was our coach. And I got cut. And it's because I didn't quite, fit into the situation. I wasn't his kind of guy. And whatever it may be, this is my perception, right? At that point, I kind of vowed to myself that I wasn't going to have anyone have my fate. So in individual sport, I controlled it. My work ethic, I was going to get if I beat people, it was because of myself. It wasn't because of a coach. No one was deciding my playing time. Yeah. So I used that as my chip on my shoulder. Living in the lily white Acton, Massachusetts, like what other chip could I have on my shoulder? But I used that to my advantage I don't want anyone responsible for me anymore, because you never should have cut me. I should have been playing that basketball season, like it was that important. And it's not going to happen again. Right. So that was one of those things that drove me. So I think we all need, as small as and ridiculously stupid as it may be, we all need something like that that's going to keep on pushing us. And I think Tiger had a major chip installed by Earl into him.
Yeah. Interesting. And, that's probably the same case with the Williams sisters and their father, totally in tennis. So it's amazing, because what I find fascinating, this is the age old sort of conflict, and that is, it's talent isn't necessarily going to get you over the top, right? It's and a lot of times the guy or the girl that's not the most talented wins because they've got the drive to do it. And so when you get somebody who is the most talented, and has the most drive,
they
it's
win.
pretty wild to see that. I mean, yeah, exactly. And you any sport, you've got it. Gretzky, Jordan, Bird, Tiger Woods, they all have that. And like you were saying, they, in their mind, they aren't good enough, and so they're constantly pushing. And then,
Yep.
obviously, you see what
Yeah, and then they get to the point where they are good enough and they enjoy being the best, and they don't want to lose that, and they keep on working for that. Some people are complacent, and they just like, well, I got to be the best, and now I can just, hey, I was there. And then there's others that work so hard because they love it so much of not only being the best, but just getting the best out of themselves, that they keep on doing that over and over and over until they can't do it anymore physically. And those are the people that you really have to look at and really appreciate. I mean, because especially in sports, because it's the entertainment for us of their greatness. And so you appreciate, and I told Michael that to his face. I say, Michael, I just want to say thank you as a fan, because with my kids and, The Last Dance that was on and all the other stuff, I appreciate you dedicating your life to entertaining us. And they get it. They get it. So it's pretty cool.
That's fascinating. And it's, what I find, this is why I love watching these sports, because, I look back on my college years playing lacrosse. Now, that was before, there was the professional leagues. I mean, there was some back then, but nothing like it is now. And now in 10 years, it's going to be even better. So lacrosse is kind of on that upward trajectory, similar to what the Major League Soccer is now. And so, but back in the day, it was, really that was it. After once you're finished college, pretty much that's it. And now it's getting better. And so I when I'm watching guys like Tiger Woods or Jordan Spieth or all these guys that are just incredible at the very pinnacle, I look back, I say, I was at the pinnacle at the time. I don't, and maybe it's just me, I don't know, but I don't necessarily feel like we were training that hard. Although when I look back on it, you had a stick in your hand all the time, and you were playing catch all the time. So
to answer your question,
there was that level.
It's a great, if you were just, you watch this, when you're done with this, you watch that 30 seconds of what you just said, and you can see your eyes shifting around, and you see your head spinning and all the other stuff. And the reason it is because you didn't understand that it wasn't work. You were working hard. You just loved it. It wasn't work.
Yeah.
You loved
it.
That's
a good point.
So it was never work. And if there was a Major League Lacrosse league at that point, you may have still just loved it, and then all of a sudden you are playing professional lacrosse. You were good enough. I was not. You were good enough to do that. Or you might have looked at it as, I got to get to that level of professional lacrosse. And maybe the love starts to come down and the business part starts to come into it, especially if there was a large amount of pay. But the reason you're searching in that sentence that you just said is because it wasn't work. And you don't really think that you were working that hard because it was just too fun.
Yeah. That's a good,
don't we wish we could do it again?
That's an excellent.
Yeah. So it's everything in life. Sometimes I kind of like it. Math was easy to me or whatever. Yeah. It was easy because it was fun. And you didn't feel like you were working. The day you feel like you're working is when you're not having as much fun. So you spent as many hours as you needed to. You could have got to whatever level you wanted to. But isn't it great that you didn't even realize that because it was so enjoyable and that's all you wanted to do?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? That hearing you say that, that's what it was. Yeah. And kind of circling it all back around here towards the end of the conversation. That's what I love about golf is I'm out there with good friends. There's a level of athleticism required. So and obviously the competition, and you can build that with doing whatever, but it's just, and so maybe I shouldn't beat myself up for that 105 that I scored on the golf course.
You're cutting out a little bit there, but it's just,
oh yeah. So I guess, I should enjoy the game of golf because I'm out there with friends. There's a level of competition, which is good to keep the juices flowing, to keep the shark moving forward. And so I guess maybe I should be just
enjoy. Yeah. Be happy with the 105 because of what the 105 brings to your day. The round of golf brought 4 hours of listening to Rich Lopez and all the other friends that we have, and 4 hours of being out there and having a couple drinks and enjoying your beautiful weather out there. And it's just those things that golf can provide. The score is really the most unimportant aspect of it. The fact that you're out there and enjoying your friends or family and whatever, or both, that's what we're looking for. So yeah, don't worry about the 105. And someday you probably will take a couple lessons, and that'll maybe get down to 104, and you'll be really happy with that.
Well, hopefully I can improve a little bit more so that the next time we play, it won't be too crazy. That, it's interesting. That just brought up a memory. And that was, I don't know, was it 15 years ago when we all got together out in Arizona? Yeah. And that was awesome. I think it was enough for
we had 8
right?
guys,
if I remember correctly.
And it was just awesome.
Yeah. And you obviously were the best golfer of all of us, but it was actually fun to watch you because you were out there enjoying yourself, just sort of hacking around, and you hacking around is, light years ahead of the rest of us. But you were like, I don't even care about the golf right now. I'm just enjoying myself. And then, you get 3 feet off the green and you chip it in or something.
That's the innate ability.
Then it really comes out that the talent's there.
And that's what golf brings, right? That's the ability of us to say, because we're going to do it again. I mean, within the next year or so, we're going to do it again. We're getting all of us back there. We'll come out to California and see you guys. But we're 54 years old now, or however old we are. These are the things that we can't say, let's go out to California and play some pickup football. Someone's getting hurt, most likely boards. But it's just one of those things that golf can get us, and to be together. What else can we do for basically 6 hours after a couple drinks and stuff? I mean, it's just a great game. It's a great lifestyle. And it really makes you appreciate all those things. And, the cool thing that I tell a lot of people about, and I'm sure you're the same way, when we get together, do you think you and I are going to talk 1 second about our college career? One thing? Not a second.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about 8th grade and 9th grade and Coach Duclos and deny ball and all the other stuff that we grew up with. And isn't that great that we can spend that much time doing something and getting back to, basically some of the happiest days of our lives, of being, unresponsible or not responsible for anything and just living life at that time. And golf, you can do that, and riding in a cart and drinking a beer and everything else. So you never worry about the score. I play with a million people. I'm most of the time better than them, but I don't know what they shot. I don't even know what I shot. And it's just such an enjoyable way to spend the afternoon, and to catch up with friends is really a blessing, really more than anything. So
I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. So I'm going to call this episode "So You Want to Go Pro." That's going to be the title of the episode. So you want to go pro, and but I think that encapsulates everything, because, again, as former athletes, you want to have something to compete, but you also have that ego that says, there's a chance out there. And then you get the reality of it. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. And I think we covered it. I mean, I think we really hit the essence of what it takes to get to the top of the pyramid. And that's not even just in sports. That's in everything in life. And
this was a great
This
time.
was a lot of fun.
I really appreciate you giving me a call. And I know I gave you a call after watching one of your podcasts, and you've been such a good friend for so many years. And this is just really cool to be able to catch up like this and throw some names in the podcast, and hopefully they'll get a kick out of it as well.
I love it. And speaking of all the competition, it's very impressive. You're podcasting for 12 years.
Yeah, well, we've been on the radio.
I love it, dude.
So, and now
awesome.
it airs on the radio, and then it goes to podcast after that. But it's a huge break in my week. In fact, we just recorded yesterday for this Saturday. It goes on Saturday mornings on our sports station here. And it's a huge break in my week. It's just such a nice outlet for me. And I play in a band. Yeah. These are outlets. And frankly, again, they're competitive outlets for me, but they're outlets that are just so fun. And I'm kind of honored to be even part of it. So, and now I'm going to be a regular here. I'm going to start learning actual important things in life, so I can be a guest on, something like climate change or something for you.
We talk about anything and everything. What I say is, when people ask me what my podcast is all about, and I say, I'm just like Joe Rogan, but with 14 million less followers.
And a little smaller wallet. Other than that, we're exactly the same.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Exactly. I love it. All right. Hey, John Ronis, love it. Had a great time catching up.
I appreciate
really
yours.
Your time.
We'll see you again real soon.
All right. Hey, guys, if you're in the military, the police departments, fire departments, or first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much for your service. Stay safe. This is the Rain Man. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Rain Man's Take, observations on the world we live in. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow Rain Man's Take on Instagram at Rain Man's Take. Also, check out our website at www.rainmanstakepodcast.com and send your comments to rainmanstake@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for future podcasts, which will be coming out every Thursday at 5 p.m. West Coast time.